Red 2 standing by, all for lit and in the green. Welcome back to another video essay, something I'm probably not going to be doing too often since I don't have the time, but this is a follow-up to Project Gastly that I was thinking about when I had a bit of time, how something like Project Gastly would wind up going if I ventured through the Johto region, and I got thinking about all that, because Heart Gold is my favourite game, Gold is where I started with Pokemon, and so we are moving on to Project Gastly 2, the Sentret sequel. So we all know that Johto's Pokemon are horrifically underused in their home region. How bad is it exactly? When it comes to trainer battles at least, because we know it's pretty rough with wild Pokemon, and I will get to that, there are 843 trainer-owned Pokemon we can battle in Gold and Silver, not counting rematches. Actually the same as Red and Blue, believe it or not. I am being technical on something. I did include the wild Electrode you have to battle to shut down the machine in the Mahogany Town Rocket Hideout, because unfortunately those are very difficult to catch on account of the fact they have a tendency to explode. I don't know what it is, but a lot of Pokemon in Gold and Silver version that have self-destruct will use it very quickly. It's strange. So, a little bit odd, but yeah, 521 or 518 trainer-owned Pokemon can be battled in the Johto section, with 325 in Kanto. There are also 363 total trainers to battle in the game, with 233 being met in Johto, while 130 are located in Kanto. It's worth noting that I did actually include the default team for Trainer House, which is the 3 Johto starter Pokemon used by the NPC Cal. You can battle your friends at Trainer House, but you need Mystery Gift, and I don't have that because, again, running on emulator. I can't record from a Game Boy Color or my 3DS, unfortunately. If you're wondering, there's an average of 2.32 Pokemon per trainer. Just thought you might like to know that. Anyway, back to the focus on the awful Johto Pokemon distribution in battles. Of the 840... well, let's say 846, for clarity's sake, because I'm including those Electrodes. Of the 846 trainer-owned Pokemon, 118, effectively 14%, or 13.947% if we want to be pedantic, are actually Johto Pokemon. Barely over an eighth of the trainer Pokemon in the game are actually Johto native. Furthermore, of the 363 trainers, only 84 of them, 23.14% for accuracy, less than a quarter, use at least one Johto Pokemon. 46 of them in Johto and 38 in Kanto. Making it worse, only 4 of the Johto gym leaders, Whitney, Jasmine, Price and Claire, actually use a Johto Pokemon on their team. In Kanto, it's a bit better because there are 5. Misty, Erica, Janine, Sabrina and Blaine all feature Johto Pokemon. Of these gym leaders, just 2 use more than one Johto Pokemon. There's Whitney's infamous Miltank, Jasmine's Steelix, Price's Piloswine, Claire's Kingdra, Misty has Quagsire, Janine has Ariados and Crobat, Sabrina has Espeon, Blaine has Magcargo, and Erica uses Bellossom and Jumpluff. No Johto gym leader uses more than one Johto Pokemon, which is really, really stupid. If you want further information, of the 46 trainers in Johto who actually use Johto Pokemon, 19.74% of the total, for accuracy's sake, half of these have a team which is either all Johto Pokemon, even if it's a team of 1, or has a majority thereof. I didn't count teams where the split is even, but if I do, that makes 30 of 46 trainers whose teams are at least 50% Johto Pokemon, a rate of 65.21%. Over in Kanto, only 38 trainers out of 130, an admittedly better rate of 29.23%, have at least one Johto Pokemon on their team. Only 15 of that 38, 39.47%, have at least a majority, and 29 of 38, or a very good 76.31%, have team ratios of at least 50% Johto Pokemon. It's less fantastic when we look at the big numbers. Basically, 30 of 233, a shade over 1/8 at 12.87%, trainers in Johto have at least 50% Johto Pokemon on their team, and 29 of 130, or 22.31% of Kanto trainers are in the same boat. Of all the trainers in the game, only 16.25% of the 363 trainers have at least 50% Johto team composition. That's really bad. Adding insult to injury is the fact a lot of Johto Pokemon simply do not show up in trainer battles. Over the course of the game, the Kanto Pokemon we do not encounter in battle across both regions are Clefable, Chansey, Omanyte, Kabuto, and the 5 legendary Pokemon, Mew included. Not too shabby though, this is Clefable's second time not pulling any duty. Maybe the devs didn't like it or something. Do you want to know what the most commonly appearing Johto Pokemon in trainer battles is? Actually a tie. Both Sentret and Remoraid appear 7 times across both regions, and Sentret only appears on 2 teams. One is a team of 3 Sentrets in Whitney's gym, and one on the SS Aqua has 4 Sentrets and a Furret. There are 18 Kanto Pokemon that appear 7 or more times in Johto alone. For some reason, the most commonly appearing Pokemon is Coffee, probably because of Team Rocket. It appears 23 times in Johto trainer battles and 14 in Kanto trainer battles. 1 less than the combined total of Rattata and Zubat. Both of those 2 only appear in Johto though. Marill is the next best of the Johto cast with only 6 appearances, 3 in each region. As for which Johto Pokemon actually get to appear, ooh boy. Interestingly, when you pick your starter in these games, you also determine which starter line you don't see in the Pokédex, with the exception of challenging Cal at the Trainer House. The first and second form of the starter not used by you and your rivals simply won't appear. In addition to the legendary Pokemon, Raikou, Entei, Suicune, Ho-Oh, Lugia, and Celebi, the following Johto Pokemon are never used in trainer battles: Chinchou, Lantern, Pichu, Cleffa, Igglybuff, Togepi, Togetic, though you at least get the egg, so that's something, Mareep, Ampharos, Azumarill, Sudowoodo, Politoed, Sunkern, Sunflora, Yanma, Misdreavus, Unknown, Wobbuffet, Pineco, Dunsparce, Gligar, Caesar, Shuckle, Heracross, Ursaring, Corsola, Mantine, Skarmory, Donphan, Porygon 2, Standler, Smeargle, Tyrogue, Smoochum, Elekid, Magby, Blissey, Larvitar, Pupitar, and Tyranitar. It sounds like I'm doing the Johto Poker Rap. If we add in the fact you will miss out on 2 Pokemon from one of the starter lines, but count the starter you pick as being used in trainer battles, in summary, there are 42 Johto Pokemon, 48 if we count the legendary Pokemon, though Celebi is distribution only, that do not appear in any trainer battles. That's a bit ridiculous. You will need to look around all over the place to register these Pokemon in your Pokédex, relying on either wild encounter rates, which are either horrid or poorly placed, or both, or unintuitive methods of locating them. For example, you must headbutt trees in specific locations to find Pineco, Apom, and Heracross. However, you will notice something when you actually register Apom in the Pokédex thanks to a trainer battle, all the way in Kanto. The game does not reveal the locations of Pokemon found via headbutt. As far as a novice trainer may be concerned, for example, having gone through the game and had no success locating Pineco, Fortress may as well be its own thing, and there's a gap in the Pokédex they still need to fill in with a single stage species. It is worth noting that in Gold and Silver, there are only 3 possible headbutt groups, and the third of these goes unused. It would have been used for trees and cities. The forest group will yield the version-exclusive Kanto bug line, which is either Caterpie or Weedle, Caterpie for gold, Weedle for silver, Execute, and Pineco in high encounter trees only. The mountain group yields Spearow, Apom, and Heracross only in high encounter trees. The unused city group would have yielded Venonat, Venomoth, Ambra, and Magnemite in high encounter trees. So there's a lot of fiddly maths involved in headbutt trees. Oh dear. Those are horrible, and I will try and put up some of the mathematics, or have it in the background. I mean, why? Just, how are you supposed to figure this out? You really do just have to guess. At least the game guides you. So I'm not going to mention getting the Kanto Pokemon, since you will be able to get them pretty much all from Red and Blue, and Yellow. However, you will need to get, as mandatory, all 3 starter lines, the fossil Pokemon bar Aerodactyl, and all the legendary Pokemon from Red and Blue, since they don't appear in these games at all. You can trade a Chansey for an Aerodactyl, but that's super hard to find, so just trade Aerodactyl over from the Kanto games. As I said, Pineco, Apom, and Heracross are only found in headbutt trees. Pineco in the forest group, Apom and Heracross in mountain trees. Those are determined by specific routes. Certain Pokemon can also have their encounter rate increased from a miserable 1% or become available with any fishing rod by receiving phone calls from a specific trainer, which again, you have to guess about and just talk to people and see whose phone number you get, and hope that in between all the random fluff and talking about how they failed to catch a Rattata or some crap, you get a call about the actual Pokemon outbreak. The Pokemon are Dunsparce for Hiker Anthony, Yanma with Bugcatcher Arnie, Snubble in Gold and Silver only with Schoolboy Chad, Marill, which is Hiker Parry, Quillfish with Fisher Ralph, and Remoraid with Fisher Wilton. You can find Marill basically by increasing its encounter rate, while Quillfish and Remoraid will become available with any fishing rod in the swarms. The Super Rod is the option which lets you find Quillfish and Remoraid normally, but this is the game where the Super Rod started becoming post-game only. The following Pokemon can only be found by breeding: Smoochum, Magby, Elekid, Pichu, Cleffa, and Igglybuff. These Pokemon are trade-only evolutions or evolving by non-level up means, so no chance of appearing in the wild either. Caesar, Steelix, Slowking, Politoed, Porygon 2, Kingdra, Espeon, Umbreon, Bellossom, Sunflora, Blissey, Togetic. Worth noting, you can actually find Steelix in the wild in Heart Gold and Soul Silver, specifically inside Clef Cave. This handful of Johto Pokemon can only be found in Kanto or at Mount Silver for some daft reason. Slugma, Houndour, Murkrow, Sneasel, Misdreavus, and Larvitar. Bad luck if you actually want a non-Umbreon Dark type to take through the main game. If you're curious, in terms of wild accessibility, the most easily accessible Johto Pokemon is good old Quagsire, which can be found in 12 locations across these games, although 9 of them are in Kanto, so actually suddenly it's not that helpful. 15 different Kanto Pokemon are ahead of this, I didn't count ties. 6 of them, the Caterpie and Weedle lines, are ahead by virtue of being in headbutt trees because there are 11 different locations that count as forest trees. Rattata, Zubat, and the Tentacool line are ahead thanks to being pretty much everywhere. And Geodude is technically ahead on 14 because there are 7 unique Geodude placed in the trap floor at Rocket HQ, which is something I forget about. I wound up factoring in event Pokemon as sort of Pokemon you find through events basically, like Lapras being encountered on Fridays, Sudowoodo and Snorlax being one-offs, the legendary Pokemon wandering around, or being at specific spots once you get a specific item. I counted those as event Pokemon for my calculations, and there are 7 gift/event Geodude. So technicalities. If you want the species that actually is everywhere, it is, of course, Magikarp, which can be found at a whopping 50 locations across the two regions. It's not too hard to see that a number of stupid decisions went into making Gold and Silver in terms of the accessibility of all these Pokemon. It's pretty unusual to see that the new Pokemon you get were barely used. Especially since Marill was actually front and centre in quite a few promotional materials. I mean, even Donphan rolled up early. Quite literally. I really do think that the approach that Black and White took was good because it forced you to use new Pokemon and test yourself. Of course, back then, some evolution lines were analogues to existing ones, such as the Timberline being a Machop substitute, Reuniclus being a slower Alakazam, and so on. The results of the tables really won't surprise you, nor will the knowledge that quite simply a lot of Johto Pokemon just do not have good stats for their availability. Now, we can expect some Pokemon to be similar due to the roles they play. Farret has a somewhat similar base stat total to Raticate, but it oddly gives away a little bit of speed and attack for some rather solid HP, and it's still fairly fast. Our early game bugs have very similar stats in ways to Beedrill and Butterfree, but they also evolve much later, comparatively speaking. Ledian is out and out terrible due to its horrid attacking stats and the iffy defensive type. It at least evolves at level 18, but it has good special offense, but it cannot hit worth a damn. Ariados evolves at level 22. The same level as Sandshrew evolves into Sandslash, it's worth noting. But Ariados' base stat total is 390, while Sandslash's is 450. Yes, Ariados did get a stat buff in Generation 7, but that was only an improvement of 10 points, to its special defense at that. Not helpful in the slightest. Didn't help that their move pools were terrible in these games. Yeah, a number of Johto Pokemon are just kind of gimmicky or outclassed for one reason or another. Zato is a good Pokemon. Not outstanding, but fairly well balanced. Its move pool is terrible in terms of level availability. Like, who was the numpty that made it wait until level 65 to learn Psychic? I mean, Natu gets it at level 50. Why? And if we're being finicky, Espeon is just straight up better due to being faster and having better special attack. It's slightly more fragile, but it's going to hit a lot harder. Of course, Xatu might have gained a better moveset over the years since evolution move pools are notoriously awful, but at the time Espeon was just better. It was just harder to get due to Happiness evolution taking ages. Of course, that's assuming you knew where Natu was. And Sneasel. Poor Sneasel. You waited the whole game to find this thing, though you could get it in the Ice Path in Crystal, only to find it had kind of middling stats, though decent attack and speed. And then you realised its two types were registered as special attacking types. So, it really couldn't do anything worth a damn. Boneheaded. Now the game did have a very good Dark type in Houndoom. Evolves from Houndour at level 24, good moves available to it, solid attacking stats and speed, but it was a pain waiting for some of its best moves. Guess where Houndour was found? Kanto. I guess they really wanted you to use Umbreon, assuming you knew Bill gave you an EV, and you knew how to evolve it via Happiness at night. At least one Steel type is easily available though, and of course, it's the one Kanto Pokemon that was changed to have the Steel type, Magnemite. Though it admittedly doesn't learn any Steel moves due to them all being based on actions from specific body parts. Magnemite has no tail, no claws, and no wings, though it probably does have screws and magnets it could have stabbed people with, and Magnet Bomb would become a thing. But the defensive combo of Steel Electric is amazing, giving a resistance to Grass, Flying, Normal, Bug, Electric, Psychic, Rock, Ice, Ghost, Dragon, Steel, and Dark, and an immunity to Poison. 13 types have a very hard time hurting a well-trained Magneton, but the double weakness to ground is pretty rough. That said, narrow move pools might not be an issue. Skarmory is pretty solid, but it's silver only and found later in the game on Route 45. It was a premier physical wall in Gen 2's metagame. Otherwise, if you wanted a steel type, you either needed the metal coat to trade evolve, or to keep chipping away with pine coat. Assuming you caught one and didn't have to spend ages watching it blow up because it has self-destruct, and protect, but that's a bit less bothersome, in its starting moveset for some dumb reason. And Caesar was probably a bit better than Fortress in Generation 2 since it at least had Metal Claw and much better attack, though Fortress was tankier and a pretty good spiked setter. Magcargo was one of the worst offenders for crap stats with its availability. Slugma took until level 38 to evolve, and Magcargo only had a base stat total of 410, along with a hideous defensive typing. Given you don't get Slugma until Kanto in these games, there is literally no point using Magcargo. Magmar has a higher base stat total and it's available in Burnt Tower. Like, Magcargo, I genuinely love you, but man, the games did it dirty. Okay, we know exactly how iffy everything in Johto is. Much as I love everything that was added and improved in the remakes, some issues do still remain, and the original games have pretty much aged like milk. Not only are there stupid decisions though, there's a good reason for why they've aged badly. Pretty much every mechanic in the game has actually been refined and adapted as time went on. These games were the genesis for modern Pokemon game mechanics. The day-night cycle, breeding, new types, trainer rematches, shiny Pokemon and many more aspects helped develop the Pokemon franchise as we know it. So while there was a bit of a lull around the Game Boy Advance era, it was still doing pretty well. Emerald is still an amazing title, and I will make my stand on the hill that it is the best way to experience Hoenn. But, worth noting, the game engine is also the same as Red and Blue. The reason you couldn't connect the Game Boy games to the Game Boy Advance titles was the total game engine revamp that occurred in Ruby and Sapphire. There were some minor tweaks to experience calculations, but the stat experience system was removed in favour of the current effort value system, and the individual value system also had a big overhaul. That in turn also helped revamp how shiny Pokemon were determined, since they now worked on a different method. The prior method was tied to the Game Boy era individual value system, and they hopefully should have been up on the screen. Of course, the fact so many aspects are the same as Red and Blue means we actually have far fewer screens of boring maths to go through. No experience groups were added either, which makes the explanation of the main project just a little bit better. So what is the main project? Well, since this is the sequel to Project Gastly, it's calculating the optimal route for the most experience in the game without utilising rematches or wild battles, unless I absolutely have to. The Poké Gear can provide some better grinding options, but of course you need to know when the trainers will actually battle you, which would have been an absolute nightmare back in the day when it was all guesswork, or maybe you needed to buy a player's guide or something. Wow, I remember when they actually had player's guides. I feel old. As you know, your rival's team changes based on which starter you pick. Now this time there are actually fewer variables in terms of team composition. Your rival, who shall henceforth be named does not change the non-starter members of his team. The overall lineup always winds up being, in its last incarnation but not necessarily in this team order, Crobat, Alakazam, Gengar, Magneton, Sneasel and Starter. So you won't see as many big variations in experience values. That said, there is one notable variation besides the usual mini fluctuations from the different experience values of the starters. It's small, and it ultimately doesn't make a great deal of difference, but the starter which suffers from this variation is Chikorita. Yep, poor Chikorita can't stop being disadvantaged even in minor ways. So what's the issue? Well, it's the rival battle in the Goldenrod Underground during the Radio Tower arc. but 2.0's, team consists of Golbat at level 30, Magnemite at level 28, Haunter at level 30, Sneasel at level 32, and his starter at level 32. I think you see where I'm going with this. Both Chikorita and Totodile are fully evolved by this point, while Cyndaquil is stuck as Quilava for 4 more levels. The levels of 2.0's Pokemon were increased by 2 for this battle if you chose Chikorita to increase the experience you received in the remakes. It also makes life a tad harder for Chikorita, but it can overcome things easily with the right partners on its team. But despite that little variation, there really isn't very much to split from any of the starters. Under normal circumstances, you'll get slightly more experience from picking the fire starter, since the water starter generally gives the most experience of the 3 starter lines. And it is indeed true that picking Cyndaquil gives you the most experience at a total across the entire game of 629,641. This is factoring in every single trainer battle we can undertake, up to and including the battle with Red. It's significantly more than the experience you can acquire in Red and Blue. The maximum experience we determined we could earn in Red and Blue was 559,450. We get 70,191 experience more. And our grand total is enough to actually get Cyndaquil to level 85. Or a Pokemon in the medium-slow group. The totals achieved by our other 2 starters are 629,548 if we pick Totodile, barely any difference, and 629,134 for Chikorita. If you like, you can add 1,476 experience to this, since you have the option to knock out the 3 Electrode on your side of the machine during the Rocket HQ arc. You can catch them, but they're very prone to self-destructing, so you'll probably get the experience anyway. Whether you add this or not, the starter is still ending up at level 85 regardless of which one you pick, once Red is defeated. They will be level 84 leading into the battle with Red, a little higher than the level of his Pikachu, and level 62 leading up to the Johto Elite Four. Now that's for a Pokemon in the medium-slow experience group. If you pick a Pokemon in the slow experience group, they'd only hit level 79 after Red is defeated. A Pokemon in the medium experience group would reach level 86, while a Pokemon in the fast experience group would be at level 92. For the record, a Pokemon in the erratic experience group would have hit level 100 and wasted some experience, since they only need 600,000 to max out their level, and fluctuating would be at level 76. This is the case for all 3 choices. The experience available to each route simply does not make a difference. And of course, the next thing to work out is going to be the stat experience total. Due to the minimal variations and calculations involved, we will probably see the same stat experience results each time in terms of stats given. It's worth noting that the 2 special stats share one individual value, and when calculating stat experience, the special attack based out of a Pokemon is used when calculating the stat experience given by them. So, as an example, you're going to get a lot more stat experience from Charizard, where its special attack is concerned, compared to, say, Gyarados. So, we get our calculation out and let's go. I'm going to put the maths on screen so I can save my voice, but basically the end result is essentially the same. No matter which starter we pick, we get 54 extra points in HP, 59 extra points in attack, 58 extra points in defense, 57 extra points in special, and 58 extra points in speed. So, given the oddities of the antiquated and confusing stat experience system, if we proceeded to get our Pokemon to level 100, those would be their stat bonuses, and you could use the box trick if you got any extra stat experience. Really, no difference, so choose whichever one you want. So, now we move on to the Pokemon we're using. The worst kept secret in the entire video. We are taking on the Johto journey with Sentret and only Sentret. So what exactly is it like using Sentret? Our little buddy is a bit less effective than Gastly, that much is true, and it can't exploit the even jankier Gen 1 mechanics. Sentret's base stats are as follows. Base 35 HP, which is 5 more than Gastly. Base 46 attack, beating Gastly's 35. Base 34 defense to Gastly's 30, not much difference there. Base 35 special attack, so totally outclassed by Gastly. Base 45 special defense to Gastly's now base 35, no more cheating for Gastly. And base 20 speed, giving away a lot to Gastly's base 80. So while Sentret is a little bit more durable than Gen 2 Gastly, it's not going to hit anywhere near as hard and will probably take a few wallops. Sentret can be found on Route 29 and Route 1, and only during the morning and day. For the regional rodent, it's fairly uncommon compared to the ubiquitous Rattata, which really should not have been showing up everywhere. Sentret's natural moveset in this game sees it start with Tackle. Then it will learn Defense Curl at level 5, Quick Attack at level 11, Fury Swipes at level 17, Slam at level 25, Rest at level 33, and Amnesia at level 41. This really isn't good. Rest and Amnesia can be alright, but its most reliable damaging move in its natural learn set is Quick Attack. Fury Swipes does have 18 base power per hit, but only a 12.5% chance to hit either 4 or 5 times, so 25% chance of 4 or 5 hits occurring 12.5 per each one, which would give it meaningful power, however its accuracy of 80 is pretty crummy. Slam, meanwhile, has 80 power and 75 accuracy with absolutely no special effect to make it worthwhile, so really you should be avoiding both these moves like you would someone who spends their time listening to Andrew Tate or Jordan Peterson. On the other hand, Sentret has a pretty decent TMHM list available to it. It gets TM01 Dynamic Punch, TM02 Headbutt, which outclasses Fury Swipes completely by virtue of being only just slightly less powerful than 4 Fury Swipes hits, and has 100 accuracy, and if we get faster than something it has a chance to flinch. TM03 Curse, TM04 Rollout, TM06 Toxic, TM10 Hidden Power, TM11 Sunny Day, TM13 Snore, TM17 Protect, TM20 Endure, TM21 Frustration, TM23 Iron Tail, TM27 Return, which surpasses Headbutt and serves as our main move, TM28 Dig, TM30 Shadow Ball, TM31 Mud Slap, TM32 Double Team, TM33 Ice Punch, TM34 Swagger, TM35 Sleep Talk, TM39 Swift, TM40 Defense Curl, TM41 Thunder Punch, TM43 Detect, TM44 Rest, TM45 Attract, TM46 Thief, TM48 Fire Punch, TM49 Fury Cutter, HM01 Cut, and HM03 Surf. Not a bad list, especially since you can get the likes of Swift and Headbutt fairly early on and Return is really solid. If you're interested, we can now breed moves onto Sentret, which I can't do since I'm substituting it for one of the starters. Should you wish to breed a move onto a Pokemon, you need A. Guesswork or a guide, B. a male parent with the move you wish to pass down, and C. a female parent of the appropriate species. Hatch an egg and voila! Sentret can get Double Edge from the Phanpy line, Focus Energy from the Nidoran male line, the Primate line or Eevee, Pursuit from the Rattata line, Tauros, Umbreon or Dunsparce, Reversal from a Smeagol that has learned the move with Sketch, Smeagol really puts in work, and Slash from the Sandshrew, Diglett, Meowth and Teddiursa lines, Farfetch'd and Sneasel. As a normal type, Sentret does not hit any types for super effective damage, does half damage to Rock and Steel types, and cannot harm Ghost types with its stab moves. It resists no types, it is immune to Ghost type moves, and it is weak to fighting moves. A few points from the prior video have disappeared admittedly. Move pools have improved somewhat, though not entirely, and we don't need to calculate how many Pokemon actually cannot hurt Sentret. Our only Ghost-type foes will be the Gastly line, and they'll be able to do some damage via Curse, unless Sentret dials up the speed to knock them out quickly. But 2.0 has his Gastly/Haunter/Gengar, with Curse from the third battle onwards, as does Karen's Gengar. Morty's Gastly and first Haunter also have it, but not his Gengar due to it having Dream Eater, nor his second Haunter. Outside of major trainer battles, the only time we encounter the Gastly line is in the Ecruteak Gym. Not a single Misdreavus in sight, remember. Gastly, and by extension Haunter, learns Curse at level 16, so if we assume basic trainer and wild Pokemon move pools work like the previous games, the move would only be pushed out of the Gastly line's available moves pool at level 36 for Gastly and level 48 for Haunter when they learn Destiny Bond. So we're stuck needing to one-shot all these rather fast Pokemon, and that isn't going to be easy. Now, for curiosity's sake, it might be worth noting how many Pokemon, including the Kanto species, do not naturally learn at least one damaging move of their own type or types. The specialised cases are Ditto, because it only ever gets Transform, Delibird, since its only move is Present, Tyrogue, since it only knows Tackle, Smeagol, since it can learn pretty much anything it wants with enough wrangling, Unknown, since Hidden Power sucks, and Wobbuffet, since it's a specialist counter-attacker, although technically Miracote is a Psychic-type damaging move. The Pokemon which naturally learn no moves of their type or types are Caterpie, Metapod, Kakuna found in the wild, still naturally learns only Harden, Sandshrew, Sandslash, Nidoqueen but not Nidoking because Poison Sting is in the latter's base moveset, Abra, only Teleport again, Seal, which only learned damaging ice and normal moves, Voltorb and Electrode, Pinsir, Magikarp, fair enough, Ledibur, Ledian, Yanma, which could at least learn Wing Attack and Crystal, Misdreavus, which weirdly enough learns Spite and Confuse Ray but not Lick, Nightshade or Shadow Ball, Pineco, Forretress due to lacking the appropriate body parts for the steel moves at the time, Gligar, Steelix, which stupidly did not actually learn Iron Tail naturally, and that's something I just found out while making this, despite the move being made for Steelix, though it did learn rock moves by virtue of Onix, which learned no ground moves, Shuckle, and Phanpy but not Donphan since it learns Earthquake as its last move. Better than last time, although it is still worth noting that some dual-type Pokemon only get a move for one of their types, and some of them just get moves that suck. Things really wouldn't get focused until Generation 3, although Pinsir wouldn't get any bug moves in its natural learn set until Generation 4, and even then, it just gets X-Scissor and that's about it. Most of its moves are actually fighting moves. Okay, so time to get the adventure rolling again. We use Sentret and only Sentret, though we can catch Pokemon for HMs and the like. We cannot grind against wild Pokemon, and we cannot use rematches with the Pokegear. The only exceptions are the exploding Electrodes. Our movesets can be changed at any time depending on what they need. I can heal in between battles, but not during battles unless I'm using berries. Held items are okay, because I decided, well, I kind of need the Quick Claw to actually stand a chance of outspeeding some of these things. Rare candies we can only use at the end of the game. Any vitamins which are found can be used. And I'm going to go through treating Price as the 7th gym rather than heading to Mahogany Town after I've beaten Morty. I'll do pretty much everything else as I go along. I've also decided, without the fiddly shaky cam phone footage, that I will be replacing Cyndaquil for the maximum experience. I am going to warn you that there was actually one trainer I completely and utterly forgot about. And yes, sometimes I did stuff things up because I was rushing and I had to remember, oh, okay, I've got to do some different things. Because well, there are trainers at the Lake of Rage that you can battle after Team Rocket has been cleared out, which is good. But there's always one Rocket Grunt that I forget. The reason I forget this Rocket Grunt, who only has like 4 Rattatas or something, so you're really not missing a lot of experience because they're level 16, is because you have to go past 2 sets of security cameras in the Rocket base to find him. You have to walk along the top section, past the first security camera, which is the only time I was allowed to battle those reoccurring rocket clones. Go past another one and battle him at the top of the trap floors. I forget about that one every time because my instinct is always go and turn the security cameras off and pick up the items. So I did miss that one, but it doesn't matter. Anyway, let's get going on the Sentret sequel. I will also record how many times I quote-unquote failed, that is, Sentret got knocked out. Buckle up, it's going to be fun, hopefully. And with this, the fun begins. We are ready to get our starter and we meet Bot 2.0, staring into the lab, waiting to steal a Pokemon, which will be Totodile in this case. I decided we should nickname Sentret this time around, so since it's a solo run, I eventually got around to calling it solo, but the emulator was moving very quickly, so mucked it up a little bit. We get our mystery egg, we get our Pokedex, and once we've got all that, we have to scurry back to the lab for our first battle. As I said, it's against Totodile, but oddly enough, your rival's Pokemon doesn't actually have the berry, which should help you win this one. Probably a good way to demonstrate everything. And for some reason I didn't actually put in the information that named him Bot 2.0, but you can't use 2s. You can't use numbers in this except for Porygon 2. Anyway, we battle he of the infamous Rattata, don't get his phone number if you can help it, and made our way slowly but surely along towards Violet City, and would you believe it, first poison type attack I take, I get poisoned. Violet City, where we catch a Bellsprout, because we're going to need something for Cut and Flash, got a Pidgey for flying, and another Bellsprout for trading. You can trade one for an Onix and have an easier time against Faulkner. But it probably won't obey you as well, so that's really not the most helpful. It's sort of useful, but sort of isn't. Anyway, we go to Sprout Tower, where we deal with old men who have a Bellsprout fixation. Why? Most of the Bellsprout you face in the game are here. There's a Hoot Hoot for variety along the way, but 2.0 complains about the Elder being weak. And then we fight an old man with another Bellsprout and a Hoot Hoot. And then it's time to take on Faulkner. Faulkner, in Gold and Silver, is the weakest gym leader in the entire series, and no Johto Pokemon, you'll notice. So we took care of things thanks to some defense curls, and Quick Attack is a godsend in the early game. We get Mud Slap, which is very handy for us, and it's a key move early on. Then we are given an egg before moving on. Some kid tries to boast and has a Rattata and a Zubat, so is no better than Team Rocket, and we just sort of blitz our way, dropping our opponent's accuracy, which is going to be a big bonus. Got a Hoppip. I was afraid Fisher Ralph might be a bit of a problem, but he just wasn't. And occasionally Mum calls us for various items. Being put to sleep is also a pain in the butt, as is dealing with hikers who don't seem to have their Pokemon's accuracy reduced. This is something we will have to remember. We do also wind up fighting fire breathers who can use poison types, which is pretty interesting, but we got Swift in Union Cave, which is a very useful move, better than Fury Swipes. Hiker Anthony is a potential trip up. You have to keep using Defense Curl and hope Low Kick doesn't crit, which is pretty important. I keep getting thrown off a bit by Low Kick's power and accuracy, which we'll find out later, but we get Repels at last. Then we wind up meeting Kurt, and we learn about Team Rocket, and head off to the Slowpoke well, where Kurt conveniently injures himself and can't do anything. Team Rocket is not sending their best, or maybe they are actually sending their best and they really are this pathetic. Either option works. Coughing is a fairly tough opponent, but of course you can lower its accuracy, have it use a really crappy move like Smog that shouldn't be hitting. It does, it poisons, but we won. And Kurt has conveniently recovered. We get one of his dodgy old balls, and then we go into the gym. Twins in these games actually use Pokemon that are connected in some way. There's the usual variety of bugs, nothing new. There aren't any new ones aside from the Spinnerack and Ladybug. And then we wind up fighting Bugsy. The setup was defense curl, defense curl, defense curl to the max, then beat up Scyther. Because, well, of course Metapod gets a critical hit because it can. Kakuna didn't poison us, which was nice. We gradually chipped away at Scyther and got the win. So far so good, and then 2.0 turns up with some new Pokemon. Hypnosis misses because being put to sleep is a real pain in the backside. Zubat tried but failed, and Croconaw kept using Rage and then Leer instead of Water Gun, which would have done more damage. We chased a Farfetch'd, and then we learned how to cut things. Why we can't do that, I don't know. Then we got a Headbutt, which gives us a bit more mileage. It's a decent power move, but we are kind of one-shotting everything at the moment and avoiding being hit by a Mankey. Had to switch to Night for a little bit because I can use some shenanigans. You can only fight the policeman at night. You get to Goldenrod, the guy tries to cheat at the slots with a Grimer. Ew. Mudslap still very handy. And then it's off to the most infamous gym in the entire game, and we have a family feud. Then after that, we wind up fighting a Snubble and some of the usual cutesy normal Pokemon before we face Whitney. Clefairy misses. Clefairy misses again. Clefairy misses a third time, so surely this is going pretty well because Bite didn't do much damage. I forgot to use Mudslap first, but I'm like, we're on a good wicket here, we got a crit. Miltank starts going, I use Mudslap. Miltank recovers, which is a pain in the butt that it can use Milk Drink. Stomp gets a crit, and yeah, all our defense was for nothing. Clefairy misses again. Clefairy gets Thrash, which we're gradually working through. And of course, it gets to go through Confusion. It gets to use an accuracy reducing move, which is fair enough. And it was only affected by Confusion for one turn. Keep in mind that Miltank wasn't affected by any accuracy lowering. Clefairy is trying to slap us and mimic us. And then gets Submission. Great. Miltank, as always, is a pain in the butt. We got the flinch. Then it missed, and Headbutt gave us the critical. We had a bit of luck. Whitney threw a tantrum. We got a water bottle. And we wound up facing some Pokemon that weren't very strong, but I could have been grinding against if I wanted to. Some decent opponents are up on Route 35, but mostly we want to wind up going through the National Park. We do find Rollout, which is handy for a while. We fight a better version of Faulkner. And then I remembered I needed the bike. And got the Quick Claw, which is my held item because it's a 20% chance of moving first, and we need it. So yeah, the Pokemon in the National Park at reasonable level, but they could be a bit better. Even Raichu wasn't doing that much damage comparatively speaking. Then I went and got Return with some more time manipulation, which was very useful. I tried to catch Sudowoodo, and unfortunately Sudowoodo was a bit of a pain in the butt. And yes, it did wind up knocking me out once. I do have to count that, but we caught it, because we can. Then we get Rock Smash for that, and we can go into Dark Cave eventually, after we get Dig, which will be useful, and then we deliver a Spearow to Route 31, so actually pretty useful. It's so far so good. It's no surprise that we had a couple of trip-ups against Whitney. We got Nightmare, which we can't use. I was always convinced that the rocks for Rock Smash look like lettuces, and you can find Pokemon underneath them. So we caught Krabby as an early surfer. You do have to pick which way you go at the bottom of Dark Cave's lower exit. Then we meet Bill and find out about the time capsule. Then we deal with the evolutions. Umbreon actually wasn't much trouble, and that was the one I felt would be the biggest pain. Then we get Surf, and we are ready for some more big battles. In the Burn Tower, we fight 2.0, who's going on about the legendary Pokemon. We got the Quick Claw pop against Haunter, which is vital, because otherwise Curse puts us on a time when we really have to hit hard. Croconaw didn't put up a huge fight, but at least it can tank an attack or two. Then we faced a guy whose name is Fire Breather Dick. Sounds like he's got the clap. And we activated legendary Pokemon, which run off. Roaming Pokemon, not fun. Nor are 5 Gastlys, but they kept using Mean Look. For some reason. And I just ran over the top of them. Even the Haunter used Mean Look. And used Curse when I wasn't there. More Mean Look. Why? Do they like staring at me? Even when it did use Curse. Didn't work. More Mean Look. And then we wind up fighting Morty, who talks about the legends. Why didn't we get a Johto Legends game? So, I wound up on a timer because Morty's smart. But I exploited the fact that if you wind up knocking out a Pokemon, you don't take Curse or Poison or whatever damage, ran over the top of Morty, and the Pokemon out on Route 38 and 39 weren't very strong. We're powering through. Return pretty much one-shots anything. It's effective 153 power. There's a cameo by 2.0. And you do need to go into the diner to get strength. That's important. But there's absolutely no indicator. We go up the lighthouse, we fight some reasonable Pokemon, which actually bothered to put us to sleep for once, then wasted it. The strongest thing in the area is a Marill that's level 21, and we volunteer to help Jasmine, because we're kind people. Don't be jerks, people. So we go out onto the sea, and we battle the usual array of water-type Pokemon, which are generally not Johto Pokemon. Or, well, there's a Remoraid, we found a Wild Mantine, and there's a Quillfish in here somewhere, but a lot of the Kanto water Pokemon turn up. And a Gyarados. And then it was time to learn Amnesia, which I decided to actually keep, because it might come in handy in later battles. Cyanwood is the tough one, because Fighting-type Gym. Hitmonlee very nearly knocked me out, and I got caught in a double battle, effectively. We outsped Hitmonchan, and it used Ice Punch, and it's got no special attack. So we fought our way through. I forgot that Low Kick has 50 power and 90 accuracy. I thought it was 60 and 100, but I might be getting it confused with Low Sweep. And we wind up facing Chuck. Primeape wastes its time with Leer and gets one shot. Then we lose a coin flip. Primeape wastes its time with Leer again. Then we lose a coin flip. Primeape wastes its time with Leer again. We win a coin flip. We lose a coin flip. Then we get the Quick Claw pop. We win the coin flip. We get another Quick Claw pop. Lady Luck is on our side and we win the battle. And we get Fly, which is very useful for travelling around. We're standing on our pigeon. We get the secret potion, take that up to Ampharos, and then we'll be able to battle Jasmine. I switched Return out at this point for Fire Punch, but I can easily get Return back with a little bit of space-time manipulation. Fire Punch easily took out Magnemite. We landed a good hit on Steelix, got the crit, got the burn. Steelix still landed a good hit with Iron Tail, and then it fainted. So we won, easily. Touring through Mount Mortar a little bit, and the Pokemon are not strong. Because you can actually go to the east after you beat Morty, but they're still not very strong. Somebody got mocked by 2.0. We can explore the Lake of Rage at all times, not just Wednesdays like in the remakes, though that is kind of neat in its own way. And then I remembered, oh yeah, we can go down into Union Cave and battle some interesting Pokemon. There's even a trainer who actually has an Eevee. Kangaskhan does land a pretty nasty Mega Punch, but we tanked it okay. Yeah, this one has the Kanto Eevee team, and on Fridays you can find Lapras, which we caught. And then we battled a few other trainers on the way to the Ruins area, and I got my dig into self-destruct combo. There's a couple of entrances, and they both wind up leading to the Ruins. There's also a secret area on Route 34 where 3 cool trainers with water Pokemon are. Then we get introduced to shiny Pokemon with the red Gyarados. Nice way to work it all into the story. We caught that. Then we met Lance. who apparently buys his capes in Celadon. And Lance killed a man, and now that we're an accessory to the crime, we storm Team Rocket's headquarters and face off against a whole bunch of grunts with Pokemon level 17. But 2.0 got beaten like a ginger stepchild. I think he might actually be a ginger stepchild by Lance. And then we fight the Rocket executives who are still not exactly bringing their best. It's a Zubat, for heaven's sake. And Eradicate. And a Coughing. Like, he's no better than the grunts. At least the female admin actually bothers to use Arbok, Gloom, and Murkrow. We finally get to fight a Murkrow. But we took it out pretty quickly. Then we fight the Electrodes, which are usually a pain to catch. Didn't use self-destruct, dug underneath it, then it used self-destruct. And we get Whirlpool for helping Lance and not telling anybody that he killed someone. So, speaking of freezing Pokemon solid, that guy Seal didn't do anything. But Jinx, with this trainer, did. There is a 10% chance of defrosting unless you use certain fire moves. Did I get it? No. Did I have to sit there while Jinx used a lot of physical attacks? Yes. It was a long, tedious result. A very unfortunate loss, but we beat the crap out of Jinx, and then we face Price, whose Piloswine had a chance to hit us hard, didn't. Dugong and Seal weren't that much trouble. He does heal his Piloswine, but we knock it out in a couple of shots. And then Team Rocket's taken over the radio tower. They're happy to show us the true terror of Team Rocket, but dude, you're using a Raticate, a freaking Raticate, that's still weaker than Morty. The usual annoying Rattata turns up, but they're small fry. The usual Coughings turn up. There are so many Coughings. We at least got to fight a Porygon, which is nice. And then we wind up meeting the director, but he's sus. He's an imposter. Throw him out the airlock by beating 6 Coughings and a Wheezing. 5, sir. Not 3. 5 Coughings and a Wheezing. Jeez, you idiot. Anyway, none of them blew up on me. The last one poisoned me, but easy knockout. We didn't have to worry about that. We got the basement key. And then I remembered, oh yeah, that's right. After the Team Rocket hideout arc, you can battle some trainers up at the Lake of Rage. And then we got stalked by 2.0. And this is the battle that gets modified a bit in the remakes because of Chikorita. So Golbat went down pretty easily. Haunter likes to stare at us for some reason. And we wound up beating the crap out of Feraligatr pretty easily. I decided Ice Punch was going to be handy for the upcoming gym. We cleared the way. We stuffed around with the button puzzles for a while. Thought, no, better talk to the director rather than pick up the item. We get the card key. We beat Team Rocket. We actually fight somebody with a competently leveled Pokemon. And then we face the female executive again, who also has competently leveled Pokemon. And it used Glare. But Vileplume was able to handle an attack or two. And though I got fully paralyzed, Murkrow couldn't knock me out, and bam! Poor defenses, one shot by return. And then we faced the guy who would become Archer. And Return just sort of pummeled him. Dig didn't quite knock out his Coughing, but there was no spiteful self-destruct. Houndoom is physically fragile, so it got one shot. And there we go, we have saved the world and we can get a pink bow to power up normal moves, and TM11, Sunny Day. And now it's time to head east of Mahogany Town and go into the Ice Path. Most of the trainers we just blitzed past. We pushed some rocks around in a clever boulder puzzle. You do have to complete them all in the remake, but you can sort of take a shortcut in this game. And then we travel down the winding paths, blitzing opponents that are only in their 20s level-wise. Come on! We've beaten a level 35 and level 36 Pokemon. Claire's gym at least has some competently leveled Pokemon, but we one-shot pretty much everything, except for one Seadra. Then we fight Claire, and we've one-shot level 37 Dragonaires, We wound up one-shotting. Kingdra hits us with a Hyper Beam. I used Amnesia, just in case. And then we slug it with Return for a crit, and we win. And then we have to go and get the Dragon Fang, which actually does nothing. It's just there. The Dragon Scale was given the power-up effect. Yeah, more bugged items. It still makes Seadra evolve into Kingdra. Then we get the Master Ball. And then we take our first steps into Kanto. If we head around to this house, we actually find where the Days of the Week siblings hang out. And you get the power-up items. So it's actually worth paying attention because they do give you items for specific types, and it's a great little Day of the Week event thingy. Interestingly though, Santos wound up changing to give you the soft sand, not the spell tag. But we blitzed all the trainers, it gets that way. There are no trainers in Victory Road, so we get Earthquake, and we wind up having another match with 2.0. He's still convinced we're weaker than him. And yeah, I wound up pummeling his team because we got the Quick Claw pop against Haunter. Kadabra couldn't stand up. Feraligatr at least took an attack. And then we made it to the Pokemon League. But I did have to go back for the sake of it to get the maximum experience finding some items in Mount Mortar. Here's the Dragon Scale so that you can evolve Seadra into Kingdra. It's well worth it. We beat up the Karate King, we did outspeed and knock out his Pokemon. If you defeat him, he will give you a Tyrogue if you have a spare slot in your party. And then we had the moveset that I thought was going to be okay, and the stats, well, let's give it a shot. So we wind up talking to Will and beginning the challenge. And yeah, I don't know why the mouse is hovering around, sorry about that. Of course, we start off with Confuse Ray, and of course, nope, we actually one-shot with Return. Jinx wasn't able to get us with Lovely Kiss, which would have put us to sleep. We one-shot it with Return because it has no defense, and we can't quite one-shot Exeggutor. Reflect sucks, because it made fighting Slowbro a genuine pain in the butt. Just could not do enough damage. It was so tedious, and naturally, there goes the paralysis. So we did have a fair bit of trouble with that. And unsurprisingly, the Amnesia I used a bit earlier actually came in handy, and we one-shot Xatu to be able to go on to Koga. Now, Koga does have some good tactics. Ariados stinks, Venomoth isn't fantastic, and I forgot I might need Fire Punch for Forretress, but we froze it. That was one of the dumbest things I'd ever done. So we dug against Muck, and it uses Minimize, and you all know what that means. Accuracy shenanigans, which we used, and when they get used against us, it's painful. So we lost against Koga. Fire Punch was immediately bought, and we actually got some Quick Claw pops, which was really handy, but then I got put to sleep. The Quick Claw's only 20%, but I did wake up very quickly and beat the daylights out of Jinx on a Quick Claw pop. Exeggutor used Leech Seed this time, which did help, because Reflect is more annoying. Naturally, I fell victim to Confusion, Leech Seed, and it blew me out of the water with Psychic. Almost. But do you think that I'm going to succeed and win the battle? Of course not. This is Pokemon. What do you think is going to happen? So we tried again. Slowbro gave me a fair bit of grief, but I got a Quick Claw pop. Venomoth used Toxic, which is annoying because I get on a really big timer, and I might as well show you how Protect worked. We knocked it out. Muck used Minimize after I used Return, and of course I missed, got hurt by Poison. Muck beat the crap out of me, and Koga used Double Team just to be a jerk, and I died from Poison. So we beat Will again. Muck is dead set on using Minimize. Crobat beat us, I got put to sleep, and Jinx beat the crap out of me with a crit. So, Confusion, more Psychic, quite literally Psychic damage. We got up to Koga again, and I beat the crap out of him. Outspeed Hitmontop and one-shot. Then I got kicked in the face. Hard. And a crit, just for the sake of it. More Confuse Ray. I'd leveled up at this point because I realised I simply couldn't do it. I was relying on too much luck. And even then, I'm still having a lot of trouble. We did one-shot Exeggutor. Muck is still annoying. We don't quite one-shot, but we beat Koga. I got the Quick Claw Pop on Hitmonlee. Mark Punch does a bit of damage. We get through to Machamp, which is the big problem. We don't one-shot. Machamp hit, even though there's a 20% chance of missing. And yeah, it just wasn't working. So, I did get past Hitmonlee, but I couldn't knock out Machamp. Crobat was a pain in the butt. Just that one double team wound up screwing me over and I got poisoned again. So I had to level grind some more. We're up to level 70. I couldn't do it on the trainer experience alone because I was relying on way too much luck. Way too much had to go specifically right for me to actually succeed with the pure trainer experience. We didn't quite knock out Machamp, but I survived with 10 HP left and was able to outspeed naturally, and Onix is weak. So we fought Karen for the first time. Umbreon can be a nuisance, but I got a crit and blew it away. Vileplume surprisingly got one shot. Gengar did use Curse. I went for Thunder Punch, which didn't KO, but I got the Quick Claw Pop. Murkrow wasn't standing up to much, and Houndoom got blown away. Then it was Lance, and I did actually set a save state, so that I didn't have to go through the whole thing again. Gyarados went down. Dragonite knows Thunder Wave, but we one-shot the level 47 Dragonites, which is really handy. Aerodactyl's a pain in the ass because we're never outspeeding, and I didn't one-shot. Very frustrating. Unfortunately, we got done by Charizard. Dragonite can use Hyper Beam as well. We got to Aerodactyl, and Rock Slide can make you flinch. And I got killed again with Hyper Beam. So I decided Amnesia might be handy just in case, but it wasn't quite helping because, well, there's a lot of physical attacks. We got the Paralysis on Aerodactyl, and it got ticked off. Because we got the Quick Claw Pop as well, but of course it got the crit. Then next time around, missed. And I got a Quick Claw Pop. I take out Charizard in one shot with Return, and 20% chance of beating Dragonite didn't work. Went for Amnesia again. Gyarados is hard-coded to use Rain Dance. Aerodactyl missed with Hyper Beam. Then it hit. I got fully paralyzed, but I was able to beat it. Took out Charizard. Lost the 20% chance again. Aerodactyl was a big stumbling block because it's all physical moves, and I got fully paralyzed a lot. Dragonites do actually have some other moves besides Thunder Wave and Hyper Beam. I was trying, but I just couldn't get it done. Thunder Wave was too much of a problem. I could knock out the Dragonites easily, but Thunder Wave was just too much, and I couldn't get the Quick Claw Pop. So I decided I'd go with Rest in place of Return, which was a bit of a gamble. So I can use Amnesia against Gyarados. First Dragonite went for Hyper Beam. The second Dragonite failed because there is a chance for status moves to fail. We got the Freeze on Aerodactyl as you saw, used Rest, Charizard had to recharge, and I got a couple of turns to beat the daylights out of it. The miss with Hyper Beam was crucial. I had the luck going my way, and at long, painfully last, we won. Finally, beat Lance, and we could move on to Kanto. And I had to stop Solo from evolving again. Of course, once we do actually move on to Kanto, there's really not a lot to do because look at the drop in levels. We're facing Pokemon in the mid-30s or low 30s, finding a little girl and getting the metal coat as a reward, but honestly we're not facing very strong opponents. It's actually kind of disappointing, but we can do our little story bit by heading out to the power plant, which has been recommissioned. If we surf down to where we'd normally find Zapdos in the originals, we can talk to the manager and trigger the event. A shady character has been hanging around Cerulean, and it's a Team Rocket grunt with a funny accent. So he panics a bit. We do get to meet him later on in the series. He's actually native to Unova. We find him on the old Nugget Bridge, and yes, he mentions he's from another country. As I said, from Unova you can talk to him, and he's not much chop. Find the machine part, take the machine part back, and you get Zap Cannon, the electric version of Dynamic Punch. Now you can get the expansion card for the radio, and we can find out how to get the rail pass now that the magnet train is active. There's a Pokédoll in the Pokemon fan club in Vermilion City, and we get the magnet train pass. Easy enough, all done. Where Cerulean Cave used to be, you can find the Berserk Gene, you can take on the Nugget Bridge and ruin Misty's date. And we can catch Snorlax as well. These are probably the most important things to do. Viridian Forest has been shrunk down, unfortunately. Music's still nice. And in Mount Moon, which is also shrunk, we can battle, 2.0. Now, things were pretty easy except for Magneton, which created a big problem. The best way to beat me is to exploit my crappy luck. Fully paralyzed and confusion. Yep, I am not winning that, and I got screwed over big time. Of course, this did muck things up a little bit, because I actually had to go do things again, and I kept the experience, but this time I was able to defeat him pretty easily. So yeah, Mount Moon much smaller. On Monday nights, you can wind up seeing Clefairy getting a Moonstone. I'm showing off Mystery Gift and headbutting trees. The fact that there's a whole lot of complex maths involved based on the position of the tree and whether it's a high encounter tree is really annoying, because there's only one in a row of 10, effectively, that winds up being a high encounter tree, and I kept headbutting the wrong tree because the information I was looking at was off by one tree, so I spent ages looking around, trying to find things, trying to work out what was going on, standing there like an idiot, and eventually I managed to work things out, try something different. And I found Pineco, which you won't encounter under normal circumstances, you won't see in the Pokédex, and it blows up. We can get the Super Rod in the post-game, which is the first time it happens and not the last, which is a bit strange. We can meet Blue on Cinnabar Island, which erupted, destroying pretty much everything on it, but Blaine survived. Now we get to battle the gym leaders. I'm showing off those battles because those were probably the most interesting battles of the lot. Lieutenant Surge was the first one I battled. And of course, we had to deal with a whole lot of crap involving double team and paralysis and things like that, and things were not quite going to plan. You'd really think I'd have bothered to get Fire Punch, but I didn't. Still, we made it through this one fairly easily despite being paralysed. The Quick Claw helped out quite a bit, which is pretty good. Then I faced Misty after ruining her date, and Thunder Punch was just putting in work. Very, very helpful. Of course, she does have Quagsire, but Quagsire wasn't standing up to us. And we've beaten Lapras and Starmie before. Lapras was sturdy, I'll give it that. I thought I could KO it, but I was wrong. And yeah, we got another level up, and Starmie went down pretty easily. We didn't actually have to deal with Confuse Ray, which was good. Sabrina is next, and while her Pokemon can hit hard, fortunately we were the beneficiary of the little programming quirk that allows us to avoid status moves, didn't have to deal with Sand Attack, and we're pretty much hitting everything like a truck. Reflect did not help. Poor Alakazam. So I did include the battle with Cal, because it's worth having a look at that. The default team is pretty decent. But use Mystery Gift to face your friends and their team at the time you Mystery Gift with them. So you can face all sorts of interesting opponents and get some good experience once a day. The absolute best would be a team of 6 Blisses, in terms of experience given. Then we fought Brock, and it's basically just Ice Punch and Thunder Punch all the way because his team isn't even fully evolved. I mean, Graveler and Rhyhorn? Dude, come on. The fossil Pokemon getting to appear is good. It makes sense with the Pewter Museum nearby. But yeah, 3 unevolved Pokemon. Oof. Not bringing your best, Brock. So it took care of that one. Then I faced Erica, and Ice Punch did the job. It really wasn't that difficult. Poor Jumpluff. Double weakness to ice. I love Jumpluff, but it's got its disadvantages. Still pretty good though, I still like having it around. We get to see Bellossom again. Bellossom goes down pretty quickly, and there we go, that's that one. Then we face Janine, who is weaker than Koga. At this point, I was not having any trouble. I'd been smashing all sorts of grunts and just took Janine out really easily. A little bit of catharsis after the trouble I had with Koga. Yeah, I mean, it's not a good lineup. Kind of sucks. Poison types weren't great for a while. Then we faced Blaine. Magcargo is a bit sort of pinkish reddish, but still looks pretty neat. He actually has Magmar like he does in Yellow, and I think his ace winds up being Rapidash. It used to be Arcanine, but he's been associated with Rapidash a bit more. Blue has his team from his championship, slightly lower levels, but he doesn't have a specific Kanto starter. He's got all the Pokemon that he can possibly have as like variations or non-starter team members. Even then, he didn't give me that much trouble in all fairness. It was pretty easy to get past him. Mind you, I was about 30 levels higher, so there was a little bit of revenge coming through. Ice Punch and Thunder Punch really put in work. I was actually pretty impressed with that. We got a lot of mileage out of that. And, yeah, just easy enough, and we get to go out to Mount Silver thanks to the special deal with Professor Oak. And we get a special battle on Mondays and Wednesdays against our rival. This was pretty tough. You can keep doing this rematch. I decided Amnesia might be a good idea. Screech didn't help, but we got the knockout. First off, Crobat, always going to be faster. Toxic, actually pretty good for me, because now I can't be paralysed by Magneton, which was a big help. Of course, Thunder is not very nice, and I've really got to make sure I fix that up if I haven't done so already. Gengar actually got 2-shot, but it still decided to use Mean Look for some reason. And yeah, Alakazam wasn't going to do too much to us. And yeah, Feraligatr goes down to a Thunder Punch. It's a good battle, it's good for experience and level grinding. And then we could finally head out to Mount Silver. Inside the cave, you do need to use Flash, which I don't think was the case in the remakes, but you did get stuck using Rock Climb to reach Red. We can find Misdreavus, Larvitar, and Sneasel around the area, and we can finally make our way up. Well, after taking a detour to catch Ho-Oh, which I decided I would on a whim, but once we've done all that, we can make our way up to face Red. I had evened things off at level 90, and the battle was going to be tough. I knew it. But I was confident in the Quick Claw and Amnesia strategies. So Pikachu has Charm, which I think it can only get from a Pichu. Of course, Red uses his full restores on his highest level Pokemon, which is Pikachu. Having my attack cut in half was a problem, because, well, I'm not doing a lot of damage with my best techniques, and paralysis from Thunder was not on my side. Quick Claw popped, but Snorlax was going to be the biggest problem. Pikachu did miss sometimes, but kept cutting my attack a lot, so having to rely on Ice Punch and Thunder Punch wasn't great, and Espeon can drop special defense with Psychic. I did try and freeze Snorlax. Was it ever going to work? No. Was it worth trying anyway? Probably, because that was the only way I was getting anywhere against it. Thunder was a pain in the butt to deal with because it was paralysing more than it was missing. Out of the 45 times Pikachu used Thunder, only 10 missed, which gives it slightly better accuracy than it's supposed to have. I did flub at one point and accidentally use Amnesia when I was already at maximum special defense, but we were running into a wall, as you can see. Charm did fail once at least. But Espeon was kind of trouble, but the wall was big and bulky and new Body Slam. Snorlax was going to be the toughest because it has naturally good special defense and great attack and great HP. Pikachu was being a pain in the butt, and Red would keep healing it if I didn't knock it out. It was very, very difficult because it seems hard-coded to actually use Charm first. Trying to use Amnesia doesn't help when it gets a critical hit and derails your plans. But how about critical hit and paralysing you? Pikachu was annoying, my Fury Cutter strategy wasn't working even though I'd pushed myself up to level 95 to see how I went, and eventually switched to Leftovers because the Quick Claw just wasn't popping anywhere near enough. I tried and tried, but I just couldn't seem to get the luck going my way. Thunder was just getting too annoying. That 30% chance of paralysing was screwing me over, and I eventually just decided to have a long and spiteful battle with Pikachu where I forced it to run out of PP for Thunder. And I don't have access to another TM for Rest. Not a smart idea. So after that happened, after this long and pointless fight where I finally hacked it around with Fury Cutter because I was that ticked off with everything, I did find that Fury Cutter would work alright against Espeon, but Snorlax is still a wall. Still a pain in the butt dealing with Pikachu with another crit paralysis. So I took a mulligan there. Pikachu still paralysed me next time, and that didn't work, so I took a mulligan because that would screw up my Fury Cutter strategy. Went back to return, and ran into Snorlax, which decided it would be the one that gets the critical hit this time. I pushed up to level 100 to see what I could do, and this time Espeon got the critical hit. I was starting to struggle. I got paralysed again and just couldn't seem to get past Pikachu with great ease. He wasn't very strong, but once again we slammed into Snorlax. Then, despite Snorlax actually paralysing me, not Pikachu, I took it out. Venusaur went down in 2 shots, but Charizard took care of things. Pikachu paralysed me again. Return dropped it, and Espeon. Things didn't go too well against Snorlax until the gods were kind and I sacked the critical hit I needed. Venusaur went in for the Sunny Day Solar Beam combo and I took it out with Ice Punch. Charizard went with Wing Attack, which was a bit weird because the sun was up and I was able to take it out. Blastoise. I genuinely thought the sun was still up, but it wasn't. Blastoise's special attack is that terrible, and I survived. Blastoise was down, Sentret had beaten the game. Paralysed with 27 HP left, Sentret soloed Gold version. And it took a lot. I had to constantly readjust my moveset. I couldn't breeze through like I could with Gastly because Sentret's stats just weren't that good. I couldn't benefit from any quirks and perks like I could in the previous game. But with a little bit of luck on my side, I was able to get through. Snorlax was going to be the stumbling block. If I got through Snorlax easily, the run went my way. And I was really, really happy with that. It was a tough challenge. I couldn't achieve the goal I wanted of beating the game with only trainer experience. That was a little sad. But I did, with a lot of work, wind up actually succeeding and beating the game. Sentret got there. We had a fair few knockouts. We had some unfortunately rotten luck quite a lot of the time. But we made it. And we are greeted by our Sentret friends as we sit and take in the victory. Yes, you can beat Pokemon Gold with a Sentret. Yes, you probably do need to be a little bit smarter with your TMs than I was. But we got there. We absolutely got there in the end, and the Sentret sequel has been completed. It's been a heck of a journey, but I'm glad I took on the challenge. It was tough, it was stressful at times, it highlights the difference between the actual serious battles and just how terrible the post-game can be in terms of levels. But it was indeed possible. One of my favourite Pokemon has hopefully etched its name into history as a true champion in the Johto region. Rest well, Solo. You've put in a heck of a job, and I'm really proud of you. I don't know what I'm going to do Pokemon-wise next, but it's probably going to be a conventional Let's Play of Emerald version. I am sorry it took so long, but we got there. Just like Sentret, we got there in the end. Thank you very much for accompanying me on this journey, and look after yourselves and be good to one another. Until the next mission, this is Red2, signing off.